Welcome to today's episode of me reviewing this highlights every day. And I've not been doing this every day, like I said before in one of the videos before that it's going to be a busy few weeks. And I think it's going to look like that until August. But I'm still planning to do this as often as I can, which means let's get started today with our first highlight that's coming from getting things done. The great thing about external brainstorming is that in addition to capturing your original ideas, it can help generate many new ones that might not have occurred to you if you didn't have a mechanism to hold your thoughts and continually reflect them back to you. Okay, I'm forgetting the context, the I'm sure there is something about external brainstorming in reference to the whole reference taking system that's been talked about in the book. There is this whole mechanism, of course, the book Getting Things Done. It's a very popular notion. You must be familiar with it. And this external brainstorming probably refers to the specific structure, in the reference taking, where you are keep when you're processing your inbox and you're classifying items into reference. How are you going to structure that? And like the author also talks about building the structure organically. And yeah, I think that's what this refers to. It might not have occurred to you if you did not have a mechanism to hold your thoughts and continually reflect them back to you. The common trend in this book is, continuous trend in this book is that these the tools that you use, they should reflect your thoughts, your ideas, your to-do list, your action items back to you. Only then it is valuable. Otherwise, it is completely useless, which I entirely agree with. But let's move forward. Cues. When something first catches our attention, we turn our head toward it. Biologically, it's easier and takes less energy to move just our head. If we are really interested, we turn our torso. All the better to be prepared to engage or embrace the object of our attention. And if we want to give it our full attention and maybe even get closer to investigate, we turn our toes as well. So the book, like the name says, it's about various physical cues that you demonstrate, verbal, physical cues, that you demonstrate. And this particular book is talking about turning completely to face the audience. So like right now, I'm completely facing the camera, toes, torso, head included. You probably just can see my head, of course, but yeah. So it's explaining that the sign of, for example, if I'm facing the screen right now and if I'm just turning my head, like it says, it's like the least amount of energy I can expend. But if I'm turning my whole torso and my toes, it's the most amount of energy I can expend, and that shows that I'm interested in what you have to say. That's the point of this particular cue. Moving on. Don't teach coding. Oh, this is a long one. Consider Stokoe notation, which participated in the elevation of ASL in relation to Bell's notation, which participated in its suppression. If you ignore this opposition, but both are surprisingly similar. One is a notation for how speech organs should be arranged to produce English sounds. The other is a notation for how the hands and fingers should be arranged to produce ASL signs. Both are simply new ways of writing down things that were already known to many. Both made their impacts, both have faded into disuse, as if they only needed to exist for a brief moment in history, just long enough to cause change. So I can relate to the idea that the author is talking about over here, but I don't remember Stokoe notation or Bell notation. I think these are different notations in the sign language, So I think Stokoe notation, which participated in elevation of ASL, the American Sign Language, and Bell's notation, which participated in suppression. Um, yeah, I think rest of it is pretty evident that it goes to show that sometimes all of these things they may seem entirely opposite, but they all are very very critical in the process of history, because they are all important in bringing us to where we are today. I think these notations are just examples over here, but like this quote says, they only needed to exist for a brief moment in history, just long enough to cause change. There are many many examples over here, but this quote was long enough. I'll move ahead. Oh, this is another long one from the Earned Life. Each of Drucker's points is illustrated somewhere in the matrix. Overselling is wasting time and effort trying to prove you're smart or right rather than trying to make a difference. Changing what you can change and letting go of what you cannot change is letting go. Placing more value on your needs than on what the customer needs is underselling. In the most optimal box, earning credibility, you will find all the brokerisms. You're not only trying to make a positive difference, you also accept your salesperson's role. You value the customer's needs more than your own. You also accept that the customer has the power to make the decision, and you don't question it if it doesn't go your way. You don't try to change what you cannot change. So the book talks about like a two by two matrix, and there are four quadrants that come up, and the top right quadrant is earning credibility. That's the optimal box, like the quote says over here, where you're not only trying to make a positive difference, but you're also accepting a salesperson's role. So the two grids are, I think one of the grids, one of the axes is about uh, selling, essentially promoting yourself, and the other is uh, earning knowledge. I think I'm paraphrasing this. I'm not really sure what was the exact words used in the book, but yeah, I think that's the image of it. So when both of these interact, like when you are earning knowledge but also be able to promote yourself, that's where you're earning credibility. That's the top right box. And I think like my camera orientation, like that's where it comes top right. Okay. So yeah, you value customers needs more than your own, but you also accept the customer has the power to make the decision, and you don't question it if it doesn't go your way, like it says. So overselling is when you don't really have the capability, the knowledge, or the capability, but you're selling it anyway. And underselling is you have a lot of it, uh, but you're not really promoting it. You're not really promoting yourself. So both of these boxes, like they're on the opposite ends of the grid, but they're both of them are not optimal. The optimal is of course like like it said earlier, earning credibility. And of course the worst of this is letting go, in which case you don't really care about that particular area at all. Kill it with fire. Another long one. The secret to building technology wrong but in the correct way is to understand that successful complex systems are made up of stable simple systems. Before your system can be scaled with practical approaches like load balancers, mesh networks, queues, and other trappings of distributive computing, the simple systems have to be stable and performant. Disasters Disaster comes from trying to build complex systems right away and neglecting the foundation with which all the system behavior, planned and unexpected, will be determined. Basically, this is saying that when you're building your system, when you're starting your system from scratch, make sure that the foundation is right. Don't go too deep into worrying about the scaling part of it. First, worry about making a stable system, the stable foundation on which the system can grow later. Yeah, you'll get to a point where you start worrying about load balancers and queues and everything else. But when you're building it for the when you initially building it, focus more on the stability of the core system. So yes, that's what the first sentence over here means. The secret to building technology wrong, but in the correct way. So it may seem like you're doing it wrong when you're not really optimizing with for load balancers or queues or anything. You're writing software that does not really use any of these constructs. Like you may be writing a system which does not use queue at all, and that may feel wrong, but that is the correct way to begin a system. So moving on, the earned life. As a general rule, if you have motivation, ability, and understanding, lacking confidence is unfortunate, almost inexcusable. You have earned the right to be confident. This kind of links to the previous quote we discussed from the earned life, the one with the quadrant. So, if you have the motivation, ability, and understanding, lacking confidence is inexcusable. There is no reason why you should lack confidence. You should be promoting yourself. You should be in the earning credibility quadrant. So, and I've already spoken a lot about this in the previous quote, which was quite long in itself. So I'll move on. Another long one. This is from Get It Done. To increase your chances of following through on a goal, you can start by answering the following questions. How can you make pursuing a goal more immediately rewarding? You could, for example, introduce music, podcasts, or audiobooks to your exercise routine. What is the most fun path to pursue your goals? You could, for example, choose to join a excuse me. You could, for example, choose to join a water aerobics class rather than buying a treadmill. Are there immediate benefits you can focus on while pursuing your goal? You could direct your attention to certain parts of your workout, like that euphoria you feel when you exercise. Can you remind yourself that other people, including your future self, care to be intrinsically motivated just as your present self does? Such a reminder will help you set achievable goals for yourself and others and can further improve your relationships. This talks a lot about what we might be familiar as habit stacking, for example. Like if you want to build up an exercise routine, stack it with something pleasurable, like listening to podcasts. That's what I do, for example. Or there are many other things, like if your goal is to stay fit, joining a water aerobics class might be more fun than buying a treadmill. So stuff like that. I think it's mostly self-evident. So I'll move ahead to accelerate. In software organizations, the ability to work and deliver in small batches is especially important because it allows you to gather user feedback quickly using techniques such as A/B testing. It's worth noting that the ability to take an experimental approach to product development is highly correlated with the technical practices that contribute to continuous delivery. The key part is the latter sentence, that the ability to take an experimental approach to product development and the technical practices that contribute to continuous delivery, they're highly correlated. So if your aim is continuous delivery, you are going to start looking at experimental approach, because uh, and the quick experiments that lets you deliver small pieces of work and test on it quickly. So yeah, that's about moving on. The leadership challenge. Before you can be a leader of others, you need to know clearly who you are and what your core values are. Once you know that, then you can give your voice to those values and feel comfortable sharing them with others. I think again it's self-evident. If you don't know your own values, how are you able to? How will you communicate about? Uh, how will you share them with your team or with others generally? So pretty self-evident. Moving on, the molecule of more. When you look down, you look into the peripersonal space. Down, as in literally, you're looking down. You look into the peripersonal space, and for that, the brain is controlled by a host of chemicals concerned with experience in the here and now. The here and now chemicals that I've mentioned many times on the videos before. But when the brain is engaged with the extrapersonal space, like such as when we're looking up, one chemical exercises more control than all the others. The chemical associated with anticipation and possibility, dopamine. This is really the introduction of the dopamine. It's in one of the beginning sections of the book, where when you're looking up, that's where you're looking at the extrapersonal space. The things that you can't reach. For example, ceiling. I can't reach the ceiling when I'm sitting over here. It's extrapersonal space to me. But if I'm looking down, I can reach most of the areas. That's the peripersonal space. That brings us to the end of our highlights today. I'm going to skip this as usual. And despite our rather long highlights today, I think we have managed to finish it in 13 minutes. Not bad. Although I know that I skipped a lot of the context in a lot of those highlights. On the other hand, given the length of the highlights, there was enough context in most of them anyway. So I think it's a good balance. But that brings us to the end of today. Well, have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.